Welcome to 5 Good Minutes. You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Galatians with Bjorklund.
So, as I said yesterday, the idea of saying I want to think about circumcision as a key issue is pretty distant from most of us today. But circumcision in the New Testament had become really a litmus test that people used to say if you weren't circumcised, then you couldn't be of the genuine faith. And we see this in Galatians chapter 2, verse 6. And here's what it says. As for those who are held in high esteem, whatever they were makes no difference to me. God does not show favoritism. They added nothing to my message. On the contrary, they recognized that I had been entrusted, here's the steward piece of it, entrusted, with the task of preaching the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter had been to the circumcised. For God, who was at work in Peter as an apostle to the circumcised, was also at work in me as an apostle to the Gentiles. James, Cephas, and John, those entrusted as pillars, gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship when they recognized the grace given to me. They agreed that we should go to the Gentiles, and they to the circumcised. All they asked that we should do is continue to remember the poor, the very thing that I had been eager to do all along. So here you have this circumcision party basically saying, yes, go to the uncircumcised. And with the background in Acts, and I won't go into it now, but there was a recognition that the gospel did not need to simply be for the circumcised. Now, again, you may say, okay, wait, what does this have to do with me, and how is this being a steward? Well, the issue here is that often what people will do in their faith journey is they will say, yes, you need Jesus alone for salvation, and you kind of need this other thing. Because if you don't have this other thing, then you really aren't a Christian at all. Here's how Tim Keller writes about this in his little commentary on Galatians. He says, the implication of this is that we can adapt the gospel to different people while preserving its essence. This is an important implication for mission. If we fail to adapt the gospel message at all to the interest of people, or if we over-adapt it and lose its essence, we will fail to persuade and win people into its joy and freedom. What are common ways in which we might fail to preserve the message today? Some churches and Christians have adapted the gospel to the modern world by removing offensive element like miracles of any sort, or the demand that we can only come to God through Christ. But then the gospel itself is gone, since we are left in a position of having to save ourselves by being good. That's a failure to preserve. On the other hand, it's possible to go too far in the other direction and fail to adapt. Many churches and Christians are so wedded to their music or organization or jargon that they're unwilling to make changes to incorporate the taste and sensibilities of outsiders. Ironically, if you under-adapt or over-adapt, you lose the gospel. If you raise your traditions to the place of non-negotiables, you essentially create a system of legalism. You are saying real Christians always do things this way. So both conservatism and legalism, non-adaption, can threaten the gospel just as much as liberalism, the non-preservation, does. The apostles were determined to preserve the gospel message and the lifestyle implications of it, but they were equally prepared to adapt the medium of that message. Translation to you, to me, is that what Paul was doing as a steward was he was saying, this message is for everybody, and I am not going to add barriers that are cultural, and your circumcision has been a cultural barrier to this message going to all. And so the question is, what are those kinds of cultural barriers? In a way, you have a choice all the time when it comes to how you want to approach faith. And that is, do you want to be boundary oriented, meaning there's a boundary kind of around the outside, and so you try to create a boundary and only let the right people in? Or do you try to be kind of well-centered? And what I mean by that is a well in the middle that people come to drink from, and you don't worry as much about the boundary. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's never a time for boundaries. The Apostle Paul, certainly in 1 Corinthians 5, 9 through 13, had boundaries about certain kinds of behaviors and lifestyles. But what I'm saying is that there is this beauty to simply saying the gospel message is for everyone. And circumcision, whatever that represents in your life, can be an unnecessary boundary. And to be a steward means to say, I am one who is willing to to demonstrate the relevance of this message, regardless of what cultural sensibilities it might upend.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.